Did you see David Mack and Perez at the event at the Peterson Motel?
They were all there.
Footage has surfaced online which some believe show the suspects who are tied into the case of Biggie Smalls. YouTube channel Choke No Joke claims they believe the video shows LAPD Rampart cops David Mack and Kevin Gaines as being on the scene outside the Peterson Automotive Museum. Other YouTube videos claim to show former suspect Amir Muhammad on the scene. Tupac's former manager Leila Steinberg, who had also trained David Mack prior to becoming a cop, had identified Rampart cops David Mack and Rafael Perez as being within the party Biggie was at before the incident had taken place. YouTube videos analysing footage captured from within the Vibe party which Biggie was at claim suspect Amir Muhammad can be seen and seems to be communicating with LAPD cop Kenneth Story, who had been providing security for Biggie and acting as a driver. With there not only being personal camcorder videos taken within the party, along with CCTV footage from within the museum, plus personal videos and news footage captured outside the museum, the suspects, if they were actually on the scene as identified, would have to be quite strategic in avoiding detection of the many cameras. In this video, we are going to take a look into the footage which is believed to have captured the suspects on camera and the ideas as to the planning which had took place on the scene. Several different pieces of footage from the night of the Biggie incident had been captured due to it taking place at a high-profile event. People online have speculated that suspects who were put forward by LAPD Detective Russell Paul have been captured in the several different videos from the night. It starts with footage from inside the Vibe party which Biggie was at. Quincy Jones had hired the Peterson Automotive Museum on the night of March 8, 1997 in order to host a party for his company's Vibe magazine and Quest Records. Kadada Jones, being Quincy Jones' daughter, was hosting the party with Chris Lattimore. She had recently been widowed, losing Tupac Shakur 6 months earlier. The loss of Tupac prompted the media to exclaim that there was a war between the East Coast and West Coast. This came after police reports from the Compton PD had been released to LA Times reporter Chuck Phillips. The reports claimed Biggie had been associated to the Southside Compton Crip street gang, who were rumored to have been behind the Tupac incident. Within Compton, there was an ongoing war between the Southside Compton Crips and the MOB Compton Pyrus, being as a result of what the media had called the East Coast-West Coast War.
The media sees the so-called East Coast-West Coast War, keeping a curious audience current with blow-by-blow coverage. Many non-related events and grievances were attributed to the beef.
Vibe magazine by Quincy Jones had publicized the war by featuring Biggie and Puffy on a cover with the headline reading East vs. West.
See Puff and Biggie on the cover and see East versus West. They just see East versus West. Oh, it's on.
East Coast people had become unwelcomed on the West Coast due to the proportion which the tagline had expanded to. Kadada Jones, however, invited over 1,000 people to the party, including Bad Boy and a majority of the artists from the East Coast. Biggie was welcomed in LA, however, by the Southside Compton Crips. Compton police claimed Biggie was witnessed as hanging out in South Park in Compton, being a Southside Compton Crip territory. The 2001 Bad Boy book by Ronan Rowe claimed Biggie had been seen with the Southside Compton Crips the day before the Vibe party. The book claimed Biggie had travelled to South Park as well as a basketball tournament, accompanied by the Southside Compton Crips. Former Compton cops had confirmed this in a Vlad TV interview and had added how the Southside Compton Crips had graffitied a mural of Biggie being on one of the public restrooms in South Park. If Biggie had been in South Park with the Southsiders, then it would have been risky due to him being in Compton while there was a war between the Southside Compton Crips and the Compton Mob Pyrus. Although what was labelled as the 10-day war had initially faded 6 months prior following the passing of Tupac, Southside Compton Crip shot caller Keefe D had claimed he had been told that Suge Knight had a $100K bounty on his head. Keefe D, in his several different internet interviews, had claimed police officers affiliated to the Southside Compton Crips, who had given him a forewarning of raids which had taken place weeks after the war, which resulted in the arrest of his nephew Orlando Anderson, had given him intel that Suge Knight had allegedly placed a $100,000 bounty being on the heads of each Southside Compton Crip who were rumored to have been in the car which had carried out the Tupac incident. These Crips were Terrence Brown, Keefe D, Orlando Anderson, and DeAndre Smith. Southside Compton Crip Corey Edwards had also have been in Las Vegas when the Tupac incident had taken place. His girlfriend was the neighbor of 1513 South Mayo Drive, a Southside Compton Crip territory whose property had belonged to security guard Bobby Finch. Compton police reports claimed that the piece used in the Tupac incident had been buried in the garden at the girlfriend's property where Corey Edwards had lived, claiming he had been ordered to dispose of it afterwards. Compton cop Tim Brennan, while on a Fox TV documentary hosted by Ice-T, had claimed that ballistics tests carried out on it matched casings found at the Tupac scene.
That came from the girlfriend of a gang member the day before seems to have come from Orlando Anderson.
It was a positive match on the casings.
Keefe D, however, claimed it was not the same piece involved. Bobby Finch was taken out outside of the property, believed to be in a case of mistaken identity for Corey Edwards, which had erupted the 10-day war. Suge Knight's Mob Piru enforcer Roger Neckbone Williams was rumored to have been responsible for Bobby Finch. This could back the claims that there was a $100K bounty on the Crips who had been in Las Vegas during the Tupac incident. However, Suge Knight had a meeting set up with Orlando Anderson after Tupac's passing, where Orlando Anderson was given $60,000 in order to testify in favor at his trial.
But when the beating victim Orlando Anderson took the stand, he testified Knight tried to stop the beating. Again, we cannot show you Anderson on the stand.
I seen him standing right there helping me. He was about the only one.
He was helping you, is that correct?
Yes.
As nothing had happened to Orlando Anderson even though they knew of his whereabouts, it could refute the claims which Keefe D had stated the police had told him. Keefe D was at the Vibe party and had greeted Biggie. Former bodyguard Gene Dill had claimed Biggie's reaction was being unaware of Keefe D and had to be reminded that he was a shot caller out there for the Crips. This indicates Keefe D's relationship was stronger with the head of Bad Boy Puffy rather than Biggie. Keefe D confirmed in a secretly recorded police interview how he had greeted them at their table. This photo shows Tupac's ex, the host of the party Kadada Jones, speaking to Bad Boy at their table. Kadada Jones was the person who had invited them to the event. However, Biggie was not supposed to be at the party but was forced by Puffy. Biggie was originally scheduled a 2-day trip to London from March 9th to March 11th, being by Bad Boy's distributor Arista. Kirk Burroughs, the former president of Bad Boy, had revealed how Arista had set up an international press junket for Biggie's second album. Biggie was supposed to leave on the morning of March 8th, the day the party had taken place. Kirk Burroughs revealed that Puffy had called him to tell Arista to cancel the London trip, as he was taking Biggie to the party instead. DJ Clark Kent revealed he had met Biggie in his hotel room before leaving for the Vibe party. DJ Clark Kent claimed Biggie had told him Puffy and D-Rock had set it up for Biggie to be at the party, cancelling his trip to London. Several Pyro gang members associated to Death Row were at the party, such as DJ Quick. Jay Flex, a ghostwriter for Death Row, had approached Biggie's table and told him he wasn't with the East Coast West Coast beef and wanted to collaborate. Footage within the party showed several East Coast stars such as Irv Gotti, DJ Clue and many others. Sean Bolden, who was at the party, had revealed in an interview with 24 Hour Hip Hop that he had seen several people screaming Death Row towards Biggie's table. He also described people using cell phones alerting contacts that Biggie was present at the party. FBI files from the Biggie case were released online, which claim witnesses identified LAPD Rampart cops as using cell phones at the party. Tupac's former manager Leela Steinberg, who had also trained LAPD Rampart cop David Mack, had identified Rampart cops David Mack and Rafael Perez as being at the party in the 2021 documentary Last Man Standing.
Did you see David Mack and Perez at the event at the Peterson Motel?
They were all there.
YouTuber Choke No Joke claimed footage from outside the Peterson Automotive Museum shows Rampart cops David Mack and Kevin Gaines at the entrance of the venue. Some believe the Rampart tattoo is present in the footage, which the Rampart cops shared on their arms. The footage has not been verified to be the cops and is just Choke No Joke's opinion. Another YouTube video claims suspect Amir Muhammad can be seen in the footage from the party. The video claims it shows Amir Muhammad communicating to LAPD cop Kenneth Story, who was providing security for Bad Boy and acting as a driver. The footage, however, solely shows the back of a man's head communicating with Kenneth Story, who is gesturing, seen wearing a red long-sleeve shirt. Kenneth Story was once again captured in footage outside the museum, seen driving Puffy's car while they were leaving. Further YouTube videos claim Amir Muhammad had been captured on tape outside the museum. The video, however, shows grainy footage of crowds outside the museum, without outlining who is suspected to be Amir Muhammad. Puffy's former bodyguard Gene Dillard claimed, while they were outside waiting for their vehicles, a person in a white shirt with a blue bow tie had approached them without saying anything. Gene Dill identified this person out of a photo lineup as Amir Muhammad, being in the 2002 documentary Biggie and Tupac.
That's him right there.
That's him.
Yeah.
That's him.
That's the guy that came up to me.
Gene Dill further claimed that the authorities had showed him a photo of the interaction taking place with Amir Muhammad, but they had blurred out the person's face. NYPD Major Case Squad detective agents had Bad Boy under surveillance at the time and had captured the interaction taking place. Tupac's former bodyguard Kevin Hackey, who had been acting undercover as a federal asset, revealed in the 2002 Biggie and Tupac documentary that he had seen documents which had confirmed that they also have surveillance material of the incident on Biggie taking place. He further claimed it was alleged that Amir Muhammad was the person behind carrying it out. Lil C's, who was in the car with Biggie when the incident had taken place, had described the suspect as wearing a white shirt and blue bow tie, which was similar to a Fruits of Islam uniform. His description had been used to create a suspect sketch, with there being two versions of the sketches created. This is the first sketch taken from Lil Caesar's eyewitness account, which was created the following day. The secondary sketch was created by the LAPD as a composite of details 2 weeks later, which had been used to give to the media. The first sketch, created from Lil Caesar's eyewitness account, had drew suspicion from investigators when they retrieved a photo of Amir Muhammad's driver's license. Amir Muhammad was originally known as Harry Billups prior to converting to Islam and becoming a member of the Nation of Islam. Amir Muhammad had gone to college with LAPD Rampart cop David Mack and was the godparent of Mack's child. An LA Times article claimed David Mack had grown up in the same Compton neighborhood as Suge Knight, which was a territory of the MOB Compton Pyrus. Amir Muhammad's connection into the Biggie case had came shortly after a Rampart connection had been discovered into death row. 9 days after the Biggie incident had taken place, Kevin Gaines had been taken out by a fellow cop called Frank Liger in an apparent road rage incident. Investigators had come to find that Kevin Gaines' girlfriend's home was that of Sharifa Knight, being Suge Knight's ex-wife. Sharifa Knight started an affair with Kevin Gaines in 1994, which Suge Knight had discovered in 1996. Suge Knight in 1996 was said to have put hands on Kevin Gaines in the back of a car, where he had then come to learn that he was a cop after Sharifa had warned him. Rumors had circulated that Suge Knight, while on set for the California Love music video, had Kevin Gaines drove out to the desert and had humiliated him by forcing him to walk back after removing his apparel. An LAPD Rampart connection was now discovered by investigators as existing with death row records. In July of 1997, the connection of Amir Muhammad had been made into the case of Biggie Smalls. A jailhouse informant by the name of Mike Robinson had given detectives details that the person involved in the Biggie case had a Middle Eastern-sounding name such as Amir. David Mack had robbed the Bank of America in November of 1997, where he had used his girlfriend, an employee of the bank, to order in over $700,000. David Mack had been caught on CCTV carrying the sacks of money out of the bank, which had just been delivered. Himself, along with Rampart cop Rafael Perez, had gone to Las Vegas with the money 2 days later. Mack's home had then been raided a month afterwards. Detectives found what was described as a shrine to Tupac in the garage. A black SS Chevy Impala with chrome wheels had also have been found, which matched the description of the suspect's vehicle. Detectives lifted the floorboards of his home and had found ammo hidden away which matched the rare type used in the Biggie case. These were 9mm armor-piercing Gecko ammunition. They are usually accessible to the police, sold to departments in Army surplus cells. LAPD Detective Russell Paul and FBI Agent Phil Carson were prepared to arrest David Mack in connection to the Biggie case. Their superiors had told them to stand down in order not to bring a scandal against the LAPD. After David Mack was imprisoned, Amir Muhammad was found to have appeared on the visiting list. LAPD Rampart cop Rafael Perez was arrested in August of 1998 after being caught stealing from the evidence locker. He had exposed the LAPD Rampart scandal for a reduced sentence. It became one of the worst police corruption scandals in United States history, implicating 70 officers of misconduct. Rafael Perez was housed in prison with Kenneth Boagni, who had become his cellmate for a month. Kenneth Boagni provided testimony based on claims which he had stated Rafael Perez had told him. Rafael Perez had allegedly told Kenneth Boagni that 5 Rampart officers were involved in the Biggie Smalls case. The testimony had named these officers as Rafael Perez, David Mack, Nino Durden, Kevin Gaines, and Sammy Martin. The testimony claimed Rafael Perez had also implicated the Nation of Islam through stating David Mack had allegedly recruited Amir Muhammad to provide assistance in the Biggie case. Kenneth Boagni's testimony had claimed Rafael Perez had told him that there was $1 million bounty on both Biggie and Puffy. Rafael Perez was alleged to have told him that the cops were said to have been given $250,000 up front in order to finance the orchestration of the hit. Kenneth Boagni claimed Perez had told him that the hit had gone wrong and the additional $750,000 was not paid out. The testimony claimed David Mack had gone on to rob the Bank of America for $722,000 in order to allegedly pay Amir Muhammad. FBI files made on the case between 1997 and 2005 had been released online. They claim the cops were also Muslim converts as well as Piru gang members. The theory combines the LAPD Rampart Division and the Nation of Islam as being financed by entities of Death Row Records. A former member of the Nation of Islam by the name of Clayton Hill claimed in 2011 that he was involved in the Biggie Smalls case as a result of being a member of the Nation. Clayton Hill confessed as being responsible for allegedly assisting Amir Muhammad with disposing of the piece which was used to carry out the hit. Clayton Hill claimed to have been instructed by Minister Tony Muhammad, Western Regional Minister of the Nation of Islam in mid-May of 1997, to pick up an individual from the Greyhound bus station in Atlanta who was coming from Los Angeles. Clayton Hill claimed he had picked up a person using the name of Dawood Muhammad, who he had later identified as Amir Muhammad. According to Clayton Hill, Amir Muhammad had stayed in a safe house for 6 weeks to lay low after the incident, where he had then allegedly travelled to Atlanta, where he was picked up by Clayton Hill. Clayton Hill alleged Amir Muhammad had retrieved the piece from a garbage bag and had told him he was on the run and was associated to the Pirus in Los Angeles. The piece was said to have continued to hold a magazine of Gecko 9mm armor-piercing ammo, which were alleged to have been supplied by David Mack. Clayton Hill claimed to have passed it on to Amir Muhammad, the personal driver of Minister Louis Farrakhan, who then took it to a high-ranking official within the Nation of Islam Chicago headquarters. Amir Muhammad was arrested on October 21, 1998, for threatening his ex-girlfriend Angelique Michelle and a new partner. After providing police with a fake driver's license in the name of Harry Muhammad, he had received a citation and was released. His ex-girlfriend and her new partner was then found no longer with us 2 days later, which was ruled as intentionally inflicted by themselves. The investigation began to look into Death Row Security Service, which had been employing cops to provide off-duty security. Reggie Wright Jr. was a former Compton cop who was hired by Suge Knight between 1993 and 1994 to provide security for Death Row. Suge Knight had loaned Reggie Wright Jr. $300,000 to begin the upstart of Right Way's Protective Services to provide Death Row Records with police security. The company's permits had been revoked after the police were found to have been being used to serve subpoenas during Snoop Dogg's 1993 trial. The LAPD raided Reggie Wright Jr.'s home in March of 1999, believing they would find a connection between Rampart cops and Right-Way security. Reggie Wright Jr. had turned over the documents of the officers who had been working for Right-Way security and therefore death row. No document showed any sign of Rampart cops being on Reggie Wright Jr.'s payroll. Sharifa Knight, however, revealed in a taped conversation with Reggie Wright Jr. that Kevin Gaines had his Rampart colleagues provide protection for Snoop Dogg.
Kevin Gaines, did you ever cut him some check from Buffalo Records?
No. Even when he worked with, and I don't even think he's the one that worked, he got his friends to do it. They were paid cash by Snoop.
She had claimed the Rampart cops were on the payroll of Snoop Dogg, who he would pay in cash for them to provide off-duty security at certain events. Reggie Wright Jr. had mentioned in the call audio that he had heard of Death Row's criminal defense attorney David Kenner as meaning to compensate Kevin Gaines. However, Sharifa denied it as factual.
I wonder if Kenner was paying that. Didn't we hear something about they supposed to do some conference?
An LA Times article from 1999 had claimed that David Mack had been offering to arrange off-duty jobs in death row, with the article reading, quote, Mack stated the job was for providing security for a wife or girlfriend of a death row executive, unquote. The article continues to claim a Compton cop had told investigators that neither Mack nor Gaines had worked for Right-Way security, but rather appeared to be associates of Suge Knight. The 2017 Fox TV documentary hosted by Ice-T had been the first to question Suge Knight about the cops during a prison interview. He had claimed that he had never met any of the cops and that they didn't work for him, and claimed it was Reggie Wright Jr. who had known them.
Tell me about David Mack.
I never met that man in my life.
The police officer, David Mack.
Never worked for me at all. Never. I never had a conversation with none of those dudes. Never met those dudes. They never worked for me. They knew Reggie Wright. They didn't know me.
Reggie Wright Jr. countered this by saying Suge Knight had said this due to Reggie Wright Jr.'s association to cops. Suge Knight, in an interview with Ice-T, went on to claim that he didn't personally arrange the hit on Biggie, but is guilty of not turning it down either.
They name you as the person behind the hit on Biggie.
Only thing I ever been guilty for is not turning it down. If somebody messes with one of my artists or one of my friends, I'm definitely going to have their back.
This would indicate that Suge Knight had knowledge that the hit was going to take place, but didn't personally orchestrate it. Suge Knight had been incarcerated in prison when the incident had taken place. Former Compton School District cop Kevin Hackey, who had been working for Right-Way security and was recruited to work as an undercover federal asset, had been interviewed by LAPD detective Russell Paul, which had been taped. The details of the interview were released in a Labyrinth book by Randall Sullivan, with it reading, quote, Hackey provided numerous places and dates where he had seen Mack and or Perez with Suge Knight, beginning with the Black Image Award shows at the Beverly Hills Hotel in 1995, unquote. Russell Paul had broken down a strategy which his investigation was believed to have found used by the cops in order to carry out the Biggie hit. Russell Paul, in the 2002 documentary Biggie and Tupac, had released what he believes was the cop strategy in the Biggie hit.
Radios being used, communication, and had to be experienced people doing this, which would lead you to believe that experienced police officers knew exactly what to do.
The FBI files released on the case also outline the strategy most likely used by the cops. The files claim the person who had carried out the physicality of the hit was a light-skinned male dressed in a suit and bow tie. The files name the person, but it is redacted, and further claim the person was identified as being with LAPD officers at the party. The files describe how sources claimed the officers had been acting as spotters, where they were giving updates on Biggie's location, being witnessed as doing this on the scene using cell phones. This corroborates Sean Bolden's claims of seeing people at the party using cell phones in order to alert contacts that Biggie was present at the party. FBI informant Mario Hammonds was deposed in a San Quentin prison by lawyer Rob Frank, in claiming he had information about the Biggie case. During the deposition, he had said, quote, "Two women who had infiltrated the Bad Boy camp provided information about when and where Big would be exposed, and his team had coordinated events on a night using cell phones," unquote. This led to rumors that the two women were death row artist Jewel and Suge Knight's cousin Lachelle, who had been with Biggie at the party on a night, but they had addressed these rumors in an Art of Dialogue interview. Kenneth Boagny, in an interview with Don Sikorsky for the Dossier podcast, had claimed that Rafael Perez was alleged to have told him that the cops had used private investigator Anthony Pellicano in order to spy on Biggie as part of orchestrating the hit. Anthony Pellicano was an infamous private investigator and Hollywood fixer who had also become a convicted criminal. He was found to have been illegally wiretapping celebrities' phone calls as part of his work as a private investigator. Boagny alleged Perez had told him that the cops had been using the private investigator to tap Biggie's phones and spy on him in order to help with orchestrating the hit. The FBI files claim the cops used the same tactics which they'd used in a different crime in order to carry out the Biggie incident. The FBI files, when detailing the raid on David Mack's home, claimed he was in possession of tactical items, along with radios and police scanners. Russell Paul claimed in the 2002 Biggie and Tupac documentary that the radios were alleged to have been being used between the LAPD officers who had been acting as spotters in order to communicate with each other and alert the hitman of the target's whereabouts. The footage, which claims to show David Mack and Kevin Gaines outside the museum, shows the person believed to be David Mack as holding something in his hands which people believe could be a radio, however it mostly resembles a cup. Russell Paul further alleged that the scanners were used to monitor police frequencies in order to navigate the hit. A diversion tactic was believed to have been carried out on the scene, as somebody had discharged a piece in the air on the opposite side of the museum just prior to the hit, which had attracted law enforcement to the opposite side of the scene. Biggie and Puffy's vehicles had been sourced by LAPD officer Kenneth Story. They had been provided with Chevy Suburbans, which had mandatory government chips installed inside them. The chips did not allow the cars to travel at high speeds, as the fuel supply would be cut off when achieving 90 miles per hour. The vehicles provided to Biggie and Puffy limited their escape if faced with fearful situations. Biggie's Suburban had been plastered with Notorious Big stickers, making it easier to identify. Russell Paul's research claimed a 6-car blockade was planned to be used in the orchestration. 3 of these cars included Puffy's head of security traveling behind, and the 2 Suburbans for Biggie and Puffy. The suspects' 3 cars were believed to be a black SS Chevy Impala with chrome wheels, a white Toyota Land Cruiser, and a third unidentified car. Police reports reveal Puffy's head of security at the time, Paul Buford, who had been riding behind a convoy with LAPD officer Reggie Blaylock, witnessed the white Toyota Land Cruiser as failing to intercept the convoy of cars. Kenneth Boagny claimed Rafael Perez had told him how Kevin Gaines was alleged to have failed on intercepting the convoy of cars, which led to only a partial hit taking place. Boagny claimed Perez had told him that both Biggie and Puffy's cars were supposed to be cut off, creating a sitting ducks condition for multiple hitmen to then take out both targets. Puffy's bodyguard Gene Dill had told their driver Officer Kenneth Story to run the red light, which is believed to have saved Puffy's life. Kevin Gaines was taken out by a fellow cop 9 days after the Biggie incident. Kenneth claimed the failed intercept was the reason why the cops allegedly didn't get paid the remaining $750,000. He claimed this is what led to David Mack getting his girlfriend, who worked in the Bank of America, to order in over $722,000, which he had been seen on camera taking during the bank robbery, which still remains unaccounted for. Kenneth claimed Perez had told him that Mack had allegedly used the money to pay Amir Muhammad. Kenneth claimed the payment was handed to Amir Muhammad in Las Vegas 2 days following the bank robbery, which was alleged to have been the reason why David Mack and Rafael Perez had visited Vegas. Several motives have been put forward as to why the cops would have carried out the hit in relation to the Russell Poole theory. Some of them include acting on behalf of Suge Knight, while others include acting against Suge Knight. Firstly, we're going to take a look into the theory of the cops acting on behalf of Suge Knight. As we heard in an audio by Suge Knight in a Fox documentary hosted by Ice-T, Suge Knight claimed he didn't orchestrate the Biggie hit, but was guilty of not turning it down. This would indicate Suge Knight dry snitching on himself of having knowledge that the hit was going to go down and allowed it to happen. Kenneth Boagny's testimony claimed Rafael Perez had allegedly told him that Suge Knight did have knowledge of the hit. In the 2021 documentary Last Man Standing by Nick Broomfield, Kenneth Boagny claimed Perez had told him that the cops had been told that Suge Knight was behind the hit.
So are you saying that Suge Knight was behind the hit, though?
Absolutely. Absolutely. From the information that I got, he made the call to get it done.
Kenneth Boagny further described the details in the 2017 TV documentary by Fox. He had claimed Mac had been told to take care of what the boss wanted done.
Mac was to find somebody to take care of what the boss wanted done.
In his interview with Don Sikorsky, Kenneth Boagny alleged that Reggie Wright Jr. and criminal defense attorney David Kenner had handled the financial situation under the instructions of Suge Knight.
I guess Suge was locked up. When Reggie Wright came to everybody and got the information from Dave Kenner and all that stuff about what they needed to be done.
David Mack's deposition questioned financial ties between himself and Death Row's criminal defense attorney David Kenner. Mack was asked in the deposition about his defense attorney Donald M. Ray's financial ties into Death Row criminal defense attorney David Kenner. The deposition alluded that Donald M. Ray had been being financed by David Kenner using money from Death Row Records in order to pay for David Mack's legal fees. David Mack, when asked about the accusation, pleaded the fifth, issuing not to comment as it may incriminate him. The deposition alluded that David Kenner had been using money from Suge Knight, generated by Death Row Records, in order to pay David Mack's attorney, Donald M. Ray, to defend David Mack in his bank robbery case. The theory of Suge Knight being involved in the hit gets tied into revenge for Tupac. Tupac had been taken out in Las Vegas 6 months before Biggie. It occurred after Tupac and Suge Knight, along with the Compton MOB Pyrus, had jumped a Southside Compton Crip called Orlando Anderson in the MGM Grand Lobby. Tupac was the first to approach Orlando Anderson, being after Mob Pyru member Trayvon Lane had told him that he was a Crip associated to Biggie and Puffy. Orlando Anderson's uncle Keefy D, who is a shot caller for the Southside Compton Crips, had told investigators that Puffy had issued $1 million bounty to the Southside Compton Crips, being on the heads of Tupac and Suge Knight. Keefy D had made this confession in 2008, after a task force which was set up to counteract the LAPD theory had set up Keefy D in a sting operation, leading to him making the confession to avoid jail time. He had told the investigators that he had handed Orlando Anderson the piece which was used in the Tupac incident, claiming it was carried out under the intention of claiming the $1 million bounty from Puffy. LA Times reporter Chuck Phillips began to publish articles following Tupac's passing, which claimed that Biggie had been behind $1 million hit on Tupac using the Southside Compton Crips. Suge Knight has spoken on the Southside Compton Crips' involvement in the Tupac case, being in its connection to Puffy twice. One comes from a 2014 TMZ interview where he speaks on the Keefy D confession being played on TV platforms, connecting Puffy into the case.
Bitch ass Puffy can give him a star, and every rat in the world said he didn't want to kill Tupac.
Yep.
Or had him shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if you notice, it was a rat on television saying he the one did the shooting, this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened, right?
The second comes from a 2024 interview with Michael Franzese, where Suge Knight had claimed Puffy was behind funding the Southside Compton Crips for the Tupac incident.
He paid them.
Puffy paid him?
And at the same time, yeah, there's no puzzle. He said 1,000 times. They know what gang this guy was from. And I'm not saying the gang, but it's only obvious. But if you want to know, there's no puzzle because it's a police report.
The theory under the claims made by Kenneth Boagny alleges that Suge Knight, acting in revenge while he was in prison after October of 1996, from being seen involved in a CCTV footage of jumping Orlando Anderson, had allegedly used his death row connections to find people to take out Biggie. The Kenneth Boagni theory claims that the Rampart cops had then been sourced and alleged David Mack had outsourced Amir Muhammad from the Nation of Islam to act as the hitman. Kenneth Boagni claimed after the full contract had failed after Puffy had escaped, Suge Knight had pulled the funding leading to the David Mack bank robbery.
Gaines was supposed to cut both of them off, the officer Gaines. A lot of people don't know that the Gaines was seriously involved in this. So Suge backed out of the deal. He was supposed to pay a certain amount of money, and he backed out. So that's why Mac did the bank job in order to pay Amir, because he was going to go after them. Because Suge didn't hire Amir, Perez and Mac got him.
A second theory alleges that the cops were involved in both the Tupac and Biggie cases. A different theory put forward under the cop umbrella has been that they were utilized in an overthrow of death row records. The theory argues the cops had been involved in the Tupac case and had then been involved in the Biggie case to throw the investigators off the track, making it look like a revenge situation. Suge Knight, in a 2018 prison interview with author Michael Douglas Carlin, had claimed the Rampart cops were behind the Tupac case.
Perez and them was all involved. They were trying to kill me too, but see, because Perez and Reg was good friends, and Perez and Sharita and Reg is great friends, and so all those three together was trying to plot.
Suge Knight in an interview had claimed Orlando Anderson did not carry out the incident and had implicated Reggie Wright Jr., his ex-wife Sharifa Knight, as well as Rafael Perez.
And the sad thing about it, Orlando wasn't even the shooter, you know? It's fantastic, not at all.
Reggie Wright Jr. claimed Suge Knight tells people what they want to hear, depending on who's carrying out the interview. For example, in his interview with Michael Franzese, as the interview was concerning Puffy, Suge Knight had spoken on the Southside Compton Crip theory of Tupac. Therefore, in these terms, with Suge Knight's interview being with Michael Douglas Carlin about the Russell Poole theory, Suge Knight had spoken on the Rampart theory. Michael Douglas Carlin was the co-author of Russell Poole, who had initially put forward the LAPD theory of Biggie. Suge Knight, in a 2023 interview with TMZ, had once again claimed the Orlando Anderson theory was incorrect, and had claimed something else had happened which he did not elaborate on.
Keefe D was in the car with his nephew, and that presumably his nephew is the one that shot Tupac. Is that correct?
No.
Then who shot Tupac?
It wasn't Anderson, so that's all I got to say about that part.
You are saying Orlando was not the shooter. Do I have that right?
1,000%.
The overthrow theory was further looked into in a 2016 TV series called Case Closed. The show, hosted by AJ Benzar, looks into the theory that both Tupac and Suge Knight were intended targets, which had been orchestrated from within Suge's own circle behind his back in order to take over Death Row Records.
Biggie was killed for no other reason than to advance this theory that the conspirators that had tried to take out Suge Knight were putting forward.
Death Row Dave, who is Suge Knight's limousine driver, had his claims looked into in a TV series. In a taped 2014 interview with Russell Poole, Dave had claimed to have been hired by Rightway's protective services, working under Reggie Wright Jr. He claimed to have then gotten full-time employment, acting as Suge Knight's personal driver for professional events. Death Row Dave had been in Las Vegas when the incident had taken place. He revealed in the interview that a security meeting had taken place with more than a dozen bodyguards. The meeting had taken place at a Las Vegas attorney's house called George Kalisis. Death Row Dave claimed David Kenner, George Kalisis, and Reggie Wright Jr. had been at the meeting, along with bodyguards Michael Moore, Frank Alexander, and a dozen others. George Kalisis was a business attorney for a nightclub called Club 662. Suge Knight had invested into the club, and Tupac was forced to travel to Las Vegas to serve community service at the club. Tupac was initially set to travel to Atlanta to confront his cousin William Lassane over selling his possessions for money. Tupac, however, had been made to travel to Las Vegas by Death Row criminal defense attorney David Kenner, who he had fired as his attorney 2 weeks prior. Tupac had broken the 3 strikes law in California, so David Kenner had one of the cases moved to Las Vegas in order to circumvent the law. George Kalisis had a fundraiser set up at Club 662, being for a Las Vegas Metro cop called Patrick Barry. Suge Knight was invested in Club 662, and David Kenner had circumstances approved by a judge where Tupac would have to perform at the benefit gig for the Las Vegas Metro cop in order to serve community service. Death Row Dave claimed while at the meeting at George Kalisis' house, they were all told by Kenner and Kalisis to disarm themselves due to permit restrictions in Vegas. Bodyguard Michael Moore refused to follow orders and didn't disarm, and was taken off of Tupac and told to stay at Club 662 with Reggie Wright Jr. Kevin Hackey was supposed to work that night, but had been directed elsewhere while acting as an undercover asset for the feds. He claimed to have been privy of wiretapped conversations prior to the trip, which had indicated an incident was going to take place. Kevin Hackey was in possession of Frank Alexander's radio, which had cut off communication between Tupac's acting bodyguard and the rest of the security detail. Director R.J. Bond released a trilogy of Tupac documentaries, which took a look into the overthrow theory of Death Row Records. This series of documentaries interviewed bodyguard Michael Moore, who had claimed to have heard the words Gotham come over a security radio while with Reggie Wright Jr., being when the Tupac incident was taking place. Michael Moore claimed another voice had came over the radio and said, "Don't say anything over the radio." Michael Moore later alleged the second voice to his belief was David Kenner's. The theory argues that the incident with Orlando Anderson was orchestrated in order to turn Orlando Anderson into a patsy. This would then provide a motive of the Southside Compton Crips aligned with Puffy to go on to become scapegoats for the incident. Keefe D had carried out an interview with R.J. Bond, where he had claimed he had made up the entire confession in order to get out of the sting operation set against him. He also claimed Death Row Records allegedly had cops acting as hitmen for them. The alleged hitmen in this theory had been utilized against Suge Knight in Las Vegas in order to take over Death Row Records. Death Row Dave admitted in his Russell Poole interview that he had met Kevin Gaines twice around Death Row. The FBI files reveal Kevin Gaines had been in Las Vegas under a special assignment for the LAPD, being during the time of the Tupac incident. Kevin Gaines had 2 of the management of the LAPD with him in Las Vegas, who were all on a special assignment during the Tupac incident. Reggie Wright Jr., in a recorded call with Sharifa Knight, had questioned her on if there had been a paper trail between Kevin Gaines and Death Row Records. Sharifa Knight told Reggie Wright Jr. that she could only recount one transaction with Kevin Gaines. She went on to say technically nobody knew about the whole Vegas thing.
Well, anything?
No, not unless it was that whole other thing.
Yeah,
technically, nobody knew about the whole thing.
No, let me just say this.
Suge Knight implicated his ex-wife in a 2018 interview with Michael Douglas Carlin, also alluding the Rampart Cops connection had been present. Suge Knight had violated his probation after he was seen involved in the Orlando Anderson incident in the MGM Grand tape. The tape was entered into evidence by David Kenner in October of 1996. Suge Knight during this time while being on trial had turned over his accounts of $500 million along with his investments being to his financial advisors David Chesnoff and Steve Steiner, who were serving under the legal umbrella with David Kenner. David Chesnoff also knew George Kalisis, who had been one of the attorneys who had told the bodyguards to unarm in Vegas. Over $13 million had been churned out in legal fees going to the law offices of Kenner shared between the parties. In Suge Knight's 2018 prison interview with Michael Douglas Carlin, he claimed that an accounting firm his distributor Jimmy Iovine had introduced him to had stolen between $30 to $40 million during this time. He claimed the accounting firm was giving David Kenner a bonus of $100,000 a month, which Jimmy Iovine had been getting a kickback from.
I had caught the accounting firm who Jimmy introduced us to. They stole like about $30-40 million, you know? And they was giving David $100,000 a month, and David said he was giving Jimmy a kickback from $100,000 a month.
Suge Knight was sentenced to 9 years in prison and had signed the company over to Reggie Wright Jr., who was getting advice from David Kenner. Suge Knight, in a 2018 prison interview with Michael Douglas Carlin, claimed he believes there was a plot against him in 1996 in order to gain control over his company.
Where all the stuff really comes from, it's come from because they want the ownership of my company.
Suge Knight had a publishing company called Big Simon Says with ASCAP, which was in a deal with Warner Bros. Reggie Wright Jr. had set up a duplicate company under the same name, used for publishing royalties. After Snoop Dogg had acquired Death Row Records in February of 2022, Death Row's music had been removed from streaming services. Former Death Row artist Daz Dillinger had claimed in an interview with Delray Richardson that Snoop Dogg was alleged to have found Reggie Wright Jr. and E1 had been stealing publishing money off of Death Row artists. Reggie Wright Jr. responded by revealing he had purchased the artist's publishing for $75,000. He had also shown paperwork on a duplicate Big Simon Says publishing company, revealing to have had publishing of 14 Tupac songs after his passing. Reggie Wright Jr., however, claimed not to have made any money from the publishing. Suge Knight, in a 2018 prison interview with Michael Douglas Carlin, had claimed it was the same circle of people involved in both the Tupac and Biggie cases. The theory argues Biggie was taken out by the same cops allegedly involved in order to make it seem like an East Coast-West Coast rivalry was responsible. Biggie's family used the LAPD theory by Russell Paul in order to file a lawsuit against the LAPD in the city of Los Angeles for Biggie's estimated lifetime earnings of $500 million. The US government in response created a task force to counteract the LAPD theory, which had the potential of bankrupting the department. Former LAPD cop Greg Kading was given a job of heading the task force to find a new theory for the Biggie case, which did not include the LAPD. Keefe D was seen as a person of interest in the case, being due to reports released after Biggie had passed, which claimed the Southside Compton Crips were behind the incident due to an unpaid debt. The unpaid debt was rumoured in the media as being the $1 million bounty, which Puffy was alleged to have had on Tupac and Suge Knight. The task force set up Keefe D in a sting operation where they had held a 25-year prison sentence over his head or immunity to talk about the cases. Keefe D accepted a proffer agreement and was secretly recorded making a confession to the Tupac case where he alleged to have been financed by Puffy. Keefe D had then broken the proffer agreement by going on public platforms repeating the claims. In his interviews, however, he retracted and avoided the statements about Puffy, alluding this narrative was forced out of him by Greg Kading to help sell his book and documentary. Keefe D, in breaking the proffer agreement, had been arrested in connection to the Tupac case in September of 2023. Keefe D is now claiming that he had made up the entire story in order to escape the initial sting operation set against him by the task force. Greg Kading's task force had identified Suge Knight's ex-girlfriend Tammy Hawkins as a potential conspirator in the Biggie case. The task force believed she was alleged to have been involved in a number of criminal fronts on Suge Knight's behalf, and Kading believed she knew information about the Biggie case. Greg Kading's task force falsified a confession letter which had been presented to Tammy Hawkins. The letter was written from the perspective of an already passed away Piru gang member by the name of Wardell Poochie Fowles, with the letter pretending he admitted to being responsible for the Biggie case. Tammy Hawkins was then told by the task force that she could go to prison and have her kids taken off of her if she didn't cooperate with the letter. Tammy Hawkins went on to tell the task force that during multiple prison visits while Suge Knight was in Mule Creek State Prison, she had assisted him with getting information back to the Pirus to orchestrate the Biggie incident in retaliation for Tupac. She told the task force that she then got in touch with Wardell Poochie Fowles, with the bounty being $25,000. She claimed to have met with Wardell Fowles in a Denny's in Lakewood, California, where he had been told he would be paid after it was carried out. Reggie Wright Jr. claimed the general manager of Death Row, Norris Anderson, had inquired on how to get $25,000 to one of Suge Knight's female associates, which was believed to be Tammy Hawkins. Tammy Hawkins had told the task force that $9,000 had been transferred into her account, which had then been withdrawn and given to Wardell Fowles 2 weeks later, with an additional $4,000 also set to be given. She was then alleged to have kept the extra $12,000 as part of her role in the plot. Wardell Faust also had a dark-coloured SS Chevy Impala, which matched the suspect's vehicle description, which had been purchased by Suge Knight. A photo was released of a car matching the suspect's vehicle by One Stop Auto, which was Suge Knight's personal auto shop in Monte, California in the 90s. The Piru theory can also be tied into the details of the suspect wearing a Nation of Islam uniform. The Labyrinth book by Randall Sullivan had revealed how police reports had detailed that during a string of robberies in 1996, the Pirus were found to have been using Muslim uniforms as disguises when committing crimes. In this video, we took a look into footage from the Biggie incident, which some believe had captured the suspects on camera. The footage does not confirm the suspects, but has sparked interest online regarding the case. Some believe the cops who are considered as suspects, as well as the Nation of Islam member, can be seen in multiple pieces of footage captured on the night. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, smash the thumbs up button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and press that bell button so you can get all the future notifications for when I upload. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.